Diana said, my name is Zach Oberman, and I will be moderating tonight's panel. Just a little about my background. I currently work for Bank of America, where I lead the core deposits and payments legal practice for the commercial side of the bank. And I have been doing that for probably about the last 5 years or so. I wanted to say welcome to the mentorship versus sponsorship. What are they and why do you need both program? Before we begin, I did have just one housekeeping note. Shreya Patel, who is listed, and I don't know if Diana may have covered this or not, but who is listed as part of the panel, is unfortunately not able to join us tonight due to a family emergency. She did indicate that she's more than happy to answer anyone's questions via email, should anyone wish to reach out. And as a side note, following this program, we will make everyone's contact information available so that you can always reach out with any questions or further comments or anything that you may have or things that you might want to discuss further after the program is over. With that said, let me quickly introduce our panel for tonight. I'll start with Julie Greenberg. Julie is a senior vice president and assistant general counsel at Citigroup, where she also sits on the company's global legal diversity committee as co-chair of the recruiting subcommittee. Julie works closely with Citi's product design and business teams to understand and assess new digital products and experiences from early development stages through launch, identifying and analyzing potential legal risks and regulatory requirements for new digital products at the bank. Some fun facts about Julie include that she has a horse named Envy. Apparently it has a rapper named Eazy-E. Julie's gonna have to explain that one. She just started taking acoustic guitar lessons, and she likes to spend her free time planning dream vacation itineraries, which I think many of us can probably relate to. Darnell Claiborne is the next panelist that will be talking with us tonight. Darnell is an attorney in AbbVie's transactions group. This group advises AbbVie on acquisitions, collaborations, joint ventures, and licenses. When he isn't working, Darnell spends time with his wife and 2 boys. And our last panelist for tonight is Emily Eschbacher. Emily is a senior associate at Lathrop GPM in the business transactions group. Her practice is mostly comprised of M&A, mergers and acquisitions, along with some general corporate and lending work. A couple fun facts about Emily are that she just started learning French on the Duolingo app, and her dream is to open and run, a rescue ranch for farm animals. I'd like to thank Julie, Darnell, and Emily for being here tonight to participate on this panel. So before we allow each of our panelists to share their experiences, the key concept to remember, and I hope that this will come into focus more as the panelists present, is that a mentor is someone that you look to or that can give you advice and or counsel, while a sponsor is someone that typically needs to be in more of a leadership position and able to advocate and create opportunities for you and expose you to career advancements that might not otherwise have been available to you without that sponsor's help. So with that in mind, I'd like to start by turning the program over to Julie to share with you some of her background and how mentors and sponsors may have played a role. So without further ado, Julie.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak on the panel. And before I begin, I should say that I think mentorship and sponsorship had literally everything to do with me being successful in the law or in any role that I've held for that matter. So just by way of background, I was born and raised right outside Washington, D.C. I thought I was going to be a professional horseback rider as a child. That did not happen. I went to University of Delaware. When I was in University of Delaware, I really didn't think much about what I was going to do. when I graduated, and then I graduated and I had to get a job, and I was an English lit major, so I didn't have a lot of options for jobs. So I found an ad in a local newspaper in Newark, Delaware, and the people who had placed the ad were looking for project managers or recruiters. And I went for the interview, I got the job. It was with these two gentlemen. Their names were Todd and Sean. They are Todd and Sean still. And they had started this company that was going to change and revolutionize staffing for companies like Amazon.com. Now, Amazon.com was maybe like 2 years old at this point. And the whole idea was that we were going to hire lots and lots of people for seasonal workforces and manage them. I had no idea how to do any of this, but I was maybe 4 weeks out of college and they hired me, and I had no idea how to do anything. I had no idea how to balance a checkbook, how to pay my bills, how to buy a car, how to dress for success, how to make a presentation. And literally for the next 5 years, Todd and Sean mentored me, and they helped me with all of these things. They helped me, they helped me open my own bank account, and they helped me, they taught me new skills, and they gave me, new concepts about me as a person. They helped me figure out who I was and where I wanted to go. And I would literally not be anywhere if it weren't for those two gentlemen. And when the time came after 6 years that I thought I wanted to go back to law school, Todd and Sean helped me by letting me stay on part-time at law school and letting me go back at night. So I kept my full salary and all of my benefits, and I just went to law school at night. And I went to the office whenever I could. So seriously, fundamentally, just the most amazing mentors and sponsors that anybody could have asked for. So I go back to law school, and I'm at night school. After I graduated from law school, I did a clerkship. After my clerkship, I went to a law firm. By this time, Todd and Sean are still really good friends, but after law school, I sort of knew I was never going to do HR law, and I just wanted to go do something different. And to this day, I have to say, Todd and Sean are still some of my closest friends. So they're not out of the picture, but they're not quite really sponsors or mentors anymore, as much as they are just really, really amazing friends who I worship. So now I'm at my firm, and it was weird because the first couple years of law firm life as a litigator were just so competitive and cutthroat, and everybody was just so, everybody in my year was just so, they were just so interested in getting ahead and being successful at the firm. And, like everybody in law school or after law school, you didn't get there because you were lazy, right? Like everybody's a star. So I really set about trying to make a name for myself and get a good reputation. And as I was doing that, there was a gentleman there, a senior partner, his name's Seth. And Seth seemed to be the hub of all of the great work in my department. He represented all of the big publishers, all of the big media companies. He did all of the First Amendment work. He did all of the employment type stuff. And I was so interested in Seth. So I found out that Seth, he liked to get to work early, really early. He liked to get to work before 6 a.m. And so every day I would go to work before 6 a.m. and I would sit at my desk, and he would walk down the hallway and I would be there. And then he would come in, say hello, say good morning to me, and then he would keep walking. And pretty soon we started talking. I told him that I was interested in working for him, or I was interested in getting advice from him. And every morning he'd come walking down the hallway, there I was. So he started giving me advice about how to work on the assignments that I wanted to work on. And then he started giving me some assignments himself and helping me with that. And then he started telling me what a bad writer I was and helping me with my writing. And that was super helpful. And then he started encouraging me to work with other people that he knew and introducing me to them. And then he started inviting me and my husband, because we were newlyweds at the time, to dinners with his family. And then he would, like we just clicked. We just really hit it off. And he was just such a great mentor and sponsor. He was hard. He was a hard mentor. He was a very aggressive person. But he was also really honest, and he gave me really good critique and really good feedback. And I did everything I could to learn from him and to never make the same mistake twice. And pretty soon he was promoting me, as I said, internally, not just to other partners that he knew, but on really big projects. He was letting me first chair trials, things that really weren't within my year. And then finally I had my daughter. And it was really, really hard to litigate and do the type of work that I was doing and be a new mom. And at one point, he had the toughest conversation, I think, of all with me, where he sat down and he told me that he wished he'd been there for his kids, and that, the honest truth was that you can choose being a parent or you could choose being a litigator in a law firm. And he didn't want me to make a mistake. And I know that's really bold, and some people might think of that as like, some kind of like officious interference with my life, but I really respected him for having that conversation. And I was like, well, Seth, I don't know what I'm going to do now then. If I'm not going to be a litigator, what am I going to do? And he said, well, I'll get you hired at one of my clients. And I was like, whatever, that's not going to happen. The next day I had 3 offers on my desk from 3 of our clients, and I accepted one of those offers. And that's how I came to be in-house. It was all because of Seth. He literally stood for me in every instance. He threw a huge going away party at his country club, which we used to call Bushwoods. Anyways, long story short, he is still to this day one of my best friends. He retired from the law. He's very well off now, and he owns a marijuana farm in Vermont. And I still go visit him with my family every year. And we still reminisce about our days in litigation at the firm. So that was how I went in-house. And then once I was in-house, I did have other mentors. Obviously, I don't think to date any have been nearly as influential as Todd or Sean or Seth, but I've had other colleagues that have been mentors, people maybe who aren't in a situation where they are bosses. I've had bosses who've been mentors, and every step of the way, they've just been critical to me sort of wrapping my head around what I want to do next or what I can do better, and getting the kinds of exposure to things that I really want. And now I know that was a little long-winded, but I think hopefully that'll be a little bit of background when I'm talking about mentorship and sponsors. I think in your mind, I want you guys, I hope you guys think of these 3 gentlemen who'd really changed my life, Todd, Sean, and Seth, and see them through the lens that I see them as almost, lifesaver heroes for me. Is that too much? It's a little late now, right?
No, I don't think that's too much at all. And I think, it's really quite helpful to see that, particularly in your example. And I think, we'll come back to this as we go through some of the questions for the panelists later. Your strategy seemed to be early and often kind of find that mentor or find that sponsor, whether it was purposeful, whether it was, just a chance, of your character, whatever the circumstances, the case may be. But I mean, you can see that it's clearly been influential in your life. It's also been not just a career stepping stone, but also, an opportunity to create contacts for the future and friendships for the future. So I don't think it's too much. I mean, I think it's helpful and illustrative, and just gives, one perspective on how other people can play an important role in one's life and career.
Great, because I want to come back to, how you find mentors or when you find mentors, because I think, hopefully then I can tie back some of the stories, because that with Seth and Todd and Sean, some of it was dumb luck and some of it was just, doing the right thing at the right moment.
No, I think that's, and I definitely plan to come back to that on some of the questions afterwards. But thank you for all of that, Julie. I think that's I mean, that's an incredible story. I think it's helpful and gives everyone a good perspective on finding a mentor or finding a sponsor. So with that, Darnell, maybe you could kind of give some of your background and on your career and your path and how mentors and or sponsors may have played a role in that and where you are today.
Yeah, just want to make sure everyone can hear me all right.
No, all right. I can hear you. You're not having any of my issues.
I got some head nods here from Julie and Diana. So I, that's a tough act to follow with Julie. I don't know if I could do it very well, but I'll try. So I am from Arkansas originally, and went to undergrad at Central Arkansas, studied finance and accounting. At the time, didn't really have mentors or sponsors, just sort of, trying to work as hard as I could. And, my philosophy was sort of just, work super hard and, so that if there's an opportunity, someone won't tell you, you're not, qualified other than you need some work experience. And so just work hard. And then, because I come from a large family. My mom has like 10 siblings and my dad has like 6. And so within it, I really just went to my family members a lot of times just if I wanted to talk about things. And so I guess, going back on what I just said, I guess maybe I had a certain uncle who was a mentor of sorts. And, I would talk to him about what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. This was, when I was graduating, it was like 2009, 2010, things were trying to bounce back in the financial crisis. And so at that time, there weren't many opportunities for finance and accounting majors. And so I postponed working and went to get an MBA at the University of Pittsburgh. And, while there, it was, talking to professors who I sort of made relationships with at the University of Pittsburgh, whether, I wanted to go to law school or not. It's like, well, I mean, I don't know, law school is really expensive and, we're still sort of trying to get out of the pandemic. And, they told me, oh, you should definitely go for it. I went for it. Like I said, talked to my uncle. He thought it was a great idea. Went to law school at University of Illinois and landed my first job. But at this point, I'm like 27 years old. And so I'm in my first job and I'm working and, still just sort of feeling lost, but not really sure about direction. No one in my family was a lawyer, no one doing like law firm stuff. And I'm just, just looking for direction. So I'm searching the firm's website. And, for me, I tend to sort of be attracted to, as far as mentorship and whatnot, to folks who look like me. So I find another African American gentleman who does what I think is very interesting work. And I reach out to him and say, hey, I'm here. I don't know what I could do. I'm only like a first year, second year at this point. But I'm really interested in the work you do. Please give me an opportunity to work for you. Whatever I could do, it would be great just to work for you. And, he gave me a call, and I guess for some back, he was in the Dallas office. So, never seen him before. Just was like, hey, I'm here. There were probably only a handful of African Americans in our firm, and even fewer African American males. And so he's like, oh, I'll call you. I'll try to help you out, whatever. And we'll see. But nothing came about for like a year and a half. Just for back, no one really liked working with first years because they don't want to take the time to train them, and they have to basically do their work. And so he wasn't really trying to work with me at first. And so then came back around maybe a year and a half later, he called me for like a research assignment, and it's like, okay, great. And so work with him on that. And then going forward, he just started giving me more and more work. And it came to the time where I was sort of his go-to guy for certain transactions with a certain client. And as I did more work, and he was teaching me, similar to what Julie said, they're a mentor, sponsor, and he was probably both because he was a partner as on like the I forget what we called it, but there was like the committee who figures out who gets bonuses and raises, and he was that on that committee as well. So he was also a sponsor when it came time to speak up for someone, and he was my toughest critic because he saw most of my work and was able to look at all of it and had a bigger sample size when it came time to figure out what it was I needed to work on, what it was I did well, what I was doing well at. But then within the practice group, he was, singing my praises to the folks that were in the Dallas office, and I started getting more work from people who were in our Dallas office. And I mean, he was instrumental in everything that I was doing in that job. And so when it came time for me to go in-house, he was, one of the people that I spoke to about it, like, why didn't you do this? Or, what are your thoughts on in-house? And, how did you get there? And, he helped me think it through and gave me his points of view and thoughts and whatnot. And, was a recommendation when I was like trying to figure out who I could safely ask that I was going to leave the firm. And he was very instrumental in sort of me finding my way in the law firm when I was just lost. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going, or other than just to work. But I'm sure everyone knows the relationships are key in anything that you do, and you won't make it as far as you could have made it if you're only relying on your work product and not relationships. And just another backstory for sponsorship. While I was at the firm, I had the opportunity to be on the hiring committee, and we basically decided who would hire for the summer and retain after summer was over to come on full time. And I had the opportunity in that position to be a sponsor for some of the summer associates who had come in. If they had one or two tough reviews, or if we were on the edge of somebody that I thought would be a really good fit, I was able to speak up for them when they were in the room. I look at mentor sponsorship as mentorship, somebody who speaks to you and at you, and a sponsor, someone speaking about you. And so I was able to be one of those people, so to take off one hat, put on the other hat. So that's it for me.
No, and thanks for that, Darnell. I think that's helpful, and you can start to see some of the commonalities, I guess, the similarities in terms of both your story and Julie's story, where part of it is seeking someone out. And again, we'll get to some of this a little bit more in depth as we go into some of the questions a little bit later. But no, thank you for that, and I appreciate the story. And maybe with that, we'll move on to Emily, and perhaps you can provide some of your background and your story on how mentorship or sponsorship may have played a role in your career.
Sure. So I was raised in a family that their help wasn't so much offered. It was if you're going to do it, you do it yourself, and if you fail, try again, try something new. But that was their way of it was a sink or swim type of family. So when I got to college, similar to Julie, I'm an English major, and I'm also a history major. I like to quip that I double majored in unemployment. But I started really seeking out those mentor relationships. So, I found a couple of English professors and a history professor that I really admired. Wanted to weigh my options. Should I go into academia? The answer was a hard no. Could I become the next great writer? The answer was again no. But those professors gave me like a pretty they gave me straight answers. I think, Julie spoke to it, where one of her mentors, sponsors, it's not always a friendship, buddy type relationship. They're going to give it to you straight. And I think that's something that is so valuable when it comes to mentorship. So, I took an AmeriCorps position and taught for a year, trying to feel out what my next step would be. And through that, I decided to go to law school. In law school, you're applying to all sorts of different jobs, just trying to start getting a paycheck, because I had worked, my whole, starting from when I was 16, and, before that was babysitting. And my first real law job, I signed up as a bankruptcy clerk. I am not a litigator in any sense of the word. It makes my stomach hurt. The conflict, it's just not for me. And so I sought out a partner in the transactions department at this very small firm, Alan. And I was like, Alan, I think you do very interesting work. It's at least not terrifying to me like litigation is. Can you please start giving me some projects? Can I sit in on some phone calls, start to see how this side of the law works and whether or not it appeals to me. He, similar to what both Darnell and Julie mentioned, he was one of my harshest critics. He ripped up lots, not literally, but, marked up tons of everything I wrote, noting where I was being inconsistent with defined terms, where I was wording things in passive voice, really shaping my writing skills, my research skills. I remember very distinctly, I wrote out this long email responding to a client question, setting forth all the answers, describing why these were the conclusions I had made. And he was like, this is good, but, remember, you're not talking to another attorney. You are talking to someone who is not in this field. A lot of this is going to read like Greek to them. It's not, you have to explain it to someone who knows nothing about the law and why you're saying what you're saying. And I carry that with me still today. He gave me that advice probably 7 years ago now. So then when I got a call from someone at Lathrop asking me to go through the interview process, I knew Alan was someone I could trust, very similar to Darnell's mentor, who I could walk through, okay, this is a much larger firm. I'm going to be doing much more sophisticated work, working with, way more attorneys. And I was used to having, 4 partner bosses versus, 20 to 40, depending on what sort of stuff I'm doing. And, he was like, okay, this is going to be a lot of hard work. You're going to be working a lot more than you normally would. Here are the pros, here are the cons. And ultimately, he pushed me to accept the position. And so when I came over to Lathrop, I was nervous that being a part of a bigger firm, I wouldn't be able to make those similar, that sort of connection with someone where I would just kind of get lost in the firm as, just a set of metrics. Now at Lathrop, which is, I think, common for lots of mid to large size firms, they assign you mentors right out the gate. So I had an assigned mentor, Wendy, who is now my sponsor and my mentor. But I started seeking out those relationships again, where I could feel comfortable and feel safe talking to someone, talking through the politics of the office, politics of the firm, bouncing ideas off of how to grow my career. If I ever were to leave the firm, like what would that look like? Should I go for partner? Those sorts of conversations that can be very uncomfortable to have if you don't have someone who will talk to you straight and give you straight answers. And then you also find those sponsors. So like Wendy, she is not in my department, but she is one of the best people to have in my corner. She talks me up to all the other offices. She has been my biggest champion. And I think that's one of the differences between a mentor and a sponsor, is that a sponsor is a champion for you. And so having her assigned, that was kind of like the luck of the draw. It worked out great. But also forming the relationships with, Mike and Chris and Scott and Ben in my office have really been instrumental in helping me develop my career and helping me hone my skills and make sure I'm focusing in the areas I want to focus, rather than just kind of floating around as a moorless ship. But yeah, I would say that's kind of my backstory.
No, and thank you for that, Emily. And I think in your case, you had later in your career kind of a sponsor or mentor who became a sponsor assigned. But yet again, you kind of see that parallel where you went out and at the beginning, I guess, looked for someone to kind of help steer your career and look for that mentor early on. And similar, I guess, to Darnell, you kind of look for someone in a practice area that interested you and that made sense for you, and kind of use that as your guiding compass. But let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into some of these questions. So, and I guess I'll start this with Julie, because she kind of left off a little bit with this in some of her presentation. I mean, she talked about her experiences with Todd and John, and then later on with Seth. And clearly she had her own unique experience with how she went about kind of finding a mentor and a sponsor. And with that being said, Julie, how would you recommend, I guess, going about getting a mentor and a sponsor in the first instance? And was your experience, the right way to do it, or looking back on it, was there maybe someone else or something that you would do differently?
Well, I think there's a couple different steps, right? For me, there's the base work, right? Which is, I think, when you have the right attitude and you're positive and you're upbeat and you're energetic and you really show that you want to learn. I mean, that's fertile ground. Like being that way naturally is, the kind of person you end up being, the kind of person that attracts people who want to help, right? Another thing I think you can do to sort of find mentors is to kind of put yourself in the right place in the right time, right? I think I knew that I wanted to get to know Seth, even though he scared the living daylights out of me. He was so hard. I knew that I wanted to get to know him and I wanted to learn from him. And so I met him where he was, right? Like I knew where he parked his car in the morning, which elevator he took to get upstairs. I knew, which way he was going to walk down the hall. I knew when he was going to walk down the hallway, and I just did it every single morning. I was there every single morning. I parked right in the same area every single morning, so that there was a better likelihood that I'd run into him, and better opportunity for him to naturally get to know me. I hate to sound like mechanistic, but I also took up golf. I knew he golfed, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna golf, and I'm terrible at golfing. But the minute he knew I was gonna golf, I mean, we were at Bushwoods all the time, playing like different charity tournaments and things like that. And for him, time is short, right? Like he doesn't have all the time in the world to invest. And being an optimistic, positive person and being there when he, doing the things he liked to do it made it easier for him to invest in me as a mentor. There are a couple other things I think that help. Getting people to come to you as mentors, being authentic, being a little vulnerable. I mean, I think you can be yourself, you can talk to people once they get to know you a little bit about what you want. And as soon as you kind of get to that place where you feel comfortable saying, hey, Seth, I really appreciate like all the times that we're talking in the morning. I've really been interested in, litigating a First Amendment case. maybe I could get some advice from you. Like, being direct about asking for that advice and being a little vulnerable about what you want, I think sometimes people start to sort of really engage and step into that mentorship role. And then sponsors, I feel like mentors are the eggs of sponsors, right? Like, if you want to find a sponsor, you got to have a mentor first. In many instances, people aren't going to rep you unless they trust you and have already invested in you in some way. So, it's sort of a path. You make a friend or an acquaintance, you get them into the mentorship role, and over time, over working hard and doing the dirty work and learning from what they say and getting, and having that trust built, they turn into sponsors, and those are the people who are going to go to bat for you. The only other thing I think I'd like to add to that, in retrospect, thinking about my relationships, is that you got to be a good friend too, right? You have to be there for them. Mentors and sponsors are people, and they have feelings and they have needs, and just being ready to help them when they need help is also another good way to kind of step up. Maybe they have a late night project that they're working on, and they need somebody to make copies in the copy room. Listen, I know you're not a copy clerk, right? I know you went to law school and you got a JD, but step up, say, I'll help. I'll help get this brief filed for you. I'll take this off your plate. I'll get the courier to do it for you. I'll drive it to the courthouse myself so you don't have to worry about it. I'll call you when I get there. Like, be ready to help them as well, because I think that helps them to help you and want to help you.
No, I think that's right, and I might have to steal that line. That mentors are the eggs of sponsors. I really like that. I think that's true.
Sounds like aliens, right? Like, it sounds like something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that you want a sponsor, you got to hatch one from a mentor, right? Like, that's
I
just
think
the way it
right.
goes.
Yeah, no, and I like your story. I mean, you knew where Seth parked. You knew his routine. You knew how he came down the hall each morning. I mean, you knew he got into the office at 6 a.m. each day. You picked up golf. I mean, you didn't just approach someone. You kind of, made certain that you were in that line of sight, that you became a part of that routine in some way, shape, or form, to put yourself in a position to succeed.
And by the way, that wasn't subtle to him. Like, he knew right away what I was doing, right? Like, he was not a dumb person. He's not a dumb person. He knew every morning he was going to pull up and I was going to be right there in my car, and we were going to walk in together and we were going to ride the elevator together, or he was going to come up right after me and see me sitting at my desk waiting. Sometimes I'd have his coffee ready for him. Like, he knew it was not subtle, and it worked.
No.
Like, it was just like, I am really into being your mentee, and I want to be your protege, and I want you to invest in me, and I will listen to what you say, and I will take it to heart. I will work hard to make you proud. And I think that really struck him,
Well, I think that's important. I mean, I think it if you want someone to invest time in you, it's important that you show the initiative to demonstrate to that person that you equally care about, what it is that they can offer you and what you can offer them. So I think, but I think that was obviously evident in, everything kind of that you did. And, and probably one of the reasons why that, ultimately worked out. So I'll take Julie's approach, which is kind of very straightforward, kind of, as much as one could to interject themselves in someone's routine and, become part of that routine. And I would ask the question, perhaps of Darnell, and say, Darnell, you went on a website, you looked for someone that you said, looked like you. I don't think he was in the same office. I think you said he was in a different office than you. He's in Dallas. You found a practice area that was of interest to you. Do you think that was the right approach? Simply approaching someone, asking them to be your mentor or sponsor, or I guess mentor early on? Or do you think there's something that you might have done differently?
Well, I tend to think that, like Julie said, you have to be intentional in some capacity, because people, especially, partners in law firms, they're going to go with what they know. Like, they've made it there. They sort of have their team. And if you want to be on part of their team, you have to get on their radar somehow, some way. And so, the part that I skipped was, I'm in Chicago, he's in Dallas, like, I'm far off from his mind. And so every, 3 or 4 weeks, I would send him an email like, hey, just, if you haven't thought about me, just wanted to just stay on the front of your mind. And I think that, you sort of wear them down. And then, like Julie said, there's an opportunity that comes. Someone who was one of his go-tos left the firm. And so now he has, an opening. It's like, okay, I need some help. There's that one annoying guy in Chicago. He keeps calling me or emailing me. So let me get him an opportunity. And it's sort of where opportunity meets preparedness. And so, they give you that one shot, and if you do it well, they have something else that comes up. They think about you, and then you start becoming part of their team. And I think that you have to be intentional, especially with someone who's done well, because they've already built it out, and you want to be part of that group that helps take what they have now going forward.
No, I think that's right. I mean, again, you can see that kind of consistent theme, which is, get out in front of someone. Obviously, in your case, not as easy to do that as, parking next to someone or knowing what time they come into the office. But, that email reminder or picking up the phone or whatever the case may be to kind of, stay front of mind. And I think that's kind of the key theme, at least early on in a career, is, find those people that you think might be helpful, and then try to, become a part of their routine, whatever it may be, or become, front of mind, I guess, in your case, Darnell, by sending those emails and being like, hey, me in Chicago again, just following up on X, Y, or Z, just to kind of build that relationship at the beginning. And so we'll kind of build, and again, I like this theme that, and Julie noted earlier, mentors are the eggs of sponsors, and kind of building on that. What would you say, and Emily, I'll put you on the spot on this question. What would you say the differences are in going about getting a mentor and a sponsor? And does it always start with mentorship that builds into sponsorship, or do you look for the latter, when looking for the former, so to speak?
So I think that mentors can come about in lots of different ways. I think mentors are a little bit, so when I think of mentors and sponsors, I think of mentors as being a little bit more organic, or at least I did before Julie mentioned that sponsors are the eggs of mentors. So when I went about looking for my mentors, I was very intentional, with the exception of Wendy, who was assigned to me, but it ended up, working out similarly. I looked for people who had personalities that I felt like I could mesh with, who were in practices that I either wanted to become a part of their team. So one of my mentors at Lathrop, Mike, he has a pretty robust M&A practice. He's also a really nice guy. And I liked working for him. So I sought him out and kind of forced him into becoming my mentor. But, when I was looking for someone to be a sponsor, to really champion me as I come up for partnership, and there's the partnership committee, all the interviews you have to go through, a business plan you have to put together. I knew that Wendy was my sponsor. She's a more senior partner. She has a lot of cachet. She has a lot of political pull. She has a lot of solid advice on, how to focus my business plan, ways to word things. Sorry if you can hear my 1-year-old screeching in the background. And she was really, I knew she was the perfect person to go and champion me to my appointed sponsor on the partnership committee. And really go sing my praises to the CEO of our firm, to, across practice groups, which is, necessary if everyone's going to be voting on you. And so I think that, it's hard to get a sponsor if you don't have them as a mentor first, or if you don't have a mentor introduce that relationship, because just as it's been mentioned, those sponsors, they're not going to champion you if they don't trust you and if they don't know you. So I do think mentorship helps foster that sort of relationship. And it hasn't been my experience that you can just go and find a sponsor. Now, there are people, if you do really good work for, they might champion you without providing that sort of interim mentorship level. But I still wouldn't think of them as sponsors as much as I would think of as Wendy, who was my mentor and became that next level, that sponsor level.
Okay, so and you pointed out, Wendy, kind of later in your career when you went over to Lathrop as your mentor, I guess initially assigned mentor that became your sponsor. And you talked about, I guess, Alan earlier in your career. So I'll just follow up with that, and I think the theme, at least the theme thus far has been find a mentor early and perhaps often. But when do you recommend either seeking out your first mentor or looking for a mentor? Because, and I'm asking this question, I guess, first to you, because you noted that in college, I mean, you were talking to your English professors about, whether or not you were, the next, poet laureate or whatever the case may be, or, Pulitzer Prize winning author or whatnot. So it seemed, you started pretty early, and that seemed to be a good strategy for you. So, I guess the question for you is, when do you recommend that you start? Was it the right call? Do you start earlier? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you should start as soon as you feel that there's that spark with a professor, or, once you get your first law clerk or summer position. If you can make that connection and start building that relationship as soon as possible, those people are going to champion you, support you, and kind of work you through your career. I'm still in touch with one of my English professors, Dr. Curran. I still talk to Alan from my prior firm. They are still like integral support systems, friends, and I go to them for career advice often. So I would say, as soon as you're able to form those relationships and seek them out, go for it. And, sometimes they don't work out, and sometimes, you kind of drop off as, the relationship kind of peters out, whether, you've moved on in your career or what have you. But as soon as you're able to start making those connections, it's good practice at the very worst. There's really no disadvantage to trying to form those relationships as soon as you can.
No, and I think that's good advice, and thanks for that, Emily. I mean, so when you have the opportunities, and I think the key is, understand that not every mentorship you seek out is necessarily going to work out for you, but the ones that do seemingly make it worthwhile. And, Darnell, I'll come back to you, I guess, on this question. Do you kind of agree with that sentiment? Do you, start early and often? I mean, it seemed you started early in your practice when you got to a firm, and I don't know if you started before that or sought out, a mentor earlier in your career, early in your education. But would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I think, if it doesn't happen organically, like it did for Emily in school, I think that, once you have an idea of what you think you want to do, I say go for it. You know, try to figure out, like I said, you know, as much as you can about the person, similar to what Julie said, so that, you know, I've always found it beneficial to be able to try to build a relationship off of something that is not related to the law, not work, because you want to, even though it's not organic, you want it to seem organic. So, you know, I would try to look and see where they went to school, if they have any interest on their page, you know, anything that I can try to reach out to them and even pretend that I'm interested in, so that it comes off as organic. But early and often, once you know that, okay, this is what I want to do, this person does what I want to do, and you have to just be ready for, sometimes you get rejected a couple of times, or, you know, sometimes, you know, if it's not very organic, their personality might not fit with yours, and so you have to get some thick skin. And so, you know, prepare yourself for what may come from, you know, this person being your mentor and what that actually means. But you know, once you're sort of mentally prepared and, substantively prepared, I say go for it.
No, and thanks for that. And so I'm going to follow this up, and maybe Emily, I'll come back to you on this question, because it seems, at least during this discussion, that most mentorships have kind of occurred either at direct relationships in school, or at your firm, or at, you know, a career move to another firm, whatever the case may be. Do you think, and when a mentor isn't at the same firm as you or something, it seems to have just been more a situation of circumstance or whatnot, but do you think your mentor always has to work at the same firm or company as you, or is there value in finding a mentor, or keeping, you know, perhaps early on looking for a mentor elsewhere, or perhaps later on in your career looking back to some of those professors that you may have, or, you know, former partners or associates you may have worked with that may help you out? Is there a benefit to having mentors elsewhere than perhaps where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's very beneficial to have mentors outside of your place of work. I think, you know, for one thing, it's someone who's not ingrained in your company or your firm's culture, and so you get a fresh outside perspective on issues or, you know, career questions that you're trying to work through. Exactly. But it's also, I think it's really critical to, if those relationships, if they're beneficial and they're working out and you're still getting a lot out of it when you're talking to, so when I'm talking to Alan about, okay, there's this thing going on at my firm and I want to position myself. So I really wanted to get on the recruiting committee and the professional responsibility committee. Those are committees with some very influential people in my firm. I'm also very invested in making sure we hire, you know, good talent. So I was trying to figure out how I could kind of work those relationships within the firm. And I was having trouble kind of trying to focus how that should work. And so I talked to Alan about it, talked about my goals, talked about my strategy, and he provided some good insight on, just from an outsider's perspective, on how I could go about certain things to kind of get where I wanted to go. And so I think it's really, if you're able to maintain those relationships, I think it's really great to have sponsors and mentors. Well, I guess you do need a sponsor within your organization, but it's really good to have a mentor outside of the firm or the company that you're at. I think that's a great thing for people to have.
No, and thank you for that. And I mean, I agree. I think having someone outside your firm is helpful because it gives you, you know, a different perspective, perhaps. and helps you kind of put some of the issues and other things in your life in perspective relative to your firm or outside the firm, and I think that's helpful to hear. And I'd also, Emily, like to say you're handling the small child at home extraordinarily well. You don't miss a beat. I've been
Emily, major props.
Except mine's mobile, and the entire time I've been on or trying to talk, I've had this rubber chicken going in the background. She's been like right under me with the rubber chicken. So the joys of working from home presenting.
I'm gonna have to try the rubber chicken. I'm gonna have to get me a rubber chicken. See if that works for mine.
Chicken.
I don't even know where this came from, to tell you the truth.
Isn't that the way most toys come about? Where did it come from?
So Diana, I have one more question that I want to follow up with Julie on. Okay, thank you. I've got one more question I want to follow up with Julie on, but I don't know if the students participating might have the ability to submit questions of their own, and if you're able to receive those. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, if anyone wants to send any questions directly to me through the chat function, they're more than welcome to. And we did start a little bit late, so I think we've got another like 5 or so minutes to finish up questions. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Or as Zach said, we'll be sending around a follow-up with everyone's contact information. And you're always more than welcome to reach out to any one of us or any of the members of the board with any questions that you have.
Yeah, so thank you, Diana. You'll let us know if any questions come in. And Julie, I'll kind of tee this one up for you. I think it's kind of a good bookend to all of these questions and the conversation we've had is, have you ever had a mentorship or sponsorship come to an end? If so, how did it end? Did it end well, organically, not so organically, and what takeaways might you have from that experience that might be worthwhile to share, understanding that most of those kind of listening to this program right now may be looking for mentors and sponsors, in the future, or for the first time, this may be a new experience to all of them.
Well, I've never had a mentorship or a sponsorship end badly. I think that's fortunate. Sometimes you have relationships, usually a sponsor or a mentor, sometimes they end organically. Maybe you move a job and your prior sponsor was an internal sponsor at your old job, and so now they're really not in a sponsorship position anymore. They really can't help promote you within that firm anymore or that position. But in general, I'd like to think that most of the people who were very serious mentors for me or very serious sponsors for me, they may not be mentors or sponsors anymore, but they are definitely still some of my best friends, some people that I just respect and I go out of my way to see when I'm around or call on their birthdays or, ask about their grandkids or whatever. It's sort of like a moss, like a rolling stone picking up moss along the way, or a snowball. Maybe a snowball's a better analogy. I just feel like relationships, professional relationships or personal relationships, when they really mean something to you, they should be a snowball, and you should do whatever you can to keep in touch. And so for Todd and Sean and Seth, obviously, I still keep in touch with them all the time. And they're just not mentors really anymore, sponsors anymore. They're all retired and happy. And I just talk to them about, their trips or their golf games. But sometimes otherwise, usually they just end organically when you leave or you move on to a different position or you change roles or your focus changes. It's okay. And I think, as a mentor now myself, and as a sponsor now myself, there's no animosity, there's no hard feeling. Like you do what you can in the time that you have to help promote other people or be promoted, and then you move on and you get a whole new opportunity with new sets of people. So
No, and I think I think that's a good perspective. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, a lot of mentors or quite frankly mentors that turn into sponsors oftentimes do become, you know, friends or acquaintances, you know, outside the workplace, and, you know, kind of fill in, I guess, some of those gaps in your life. Just because one role may have diminished in its importance to your career doesn't mean that there's not, you know, a transition or not another, you know, means to kind of utilizing those or having those people be a part of your life, I should say. And Emily or Darnell, anything further to add to kind of Julie's thoughts on that?
Nope.
Here,
Julie.
No, I think she summed it up pretty well.
So, you know, we're eggs and snowballs. That's the theme of the day. Catching snowballs.
Round things, oblong things.
Round things.
Yeah, so we've gotten some great questions. I will throw them out, and if any of our wonderful panelists want to take a shot at answering. Our first question, does it make sense to have mentors in other states, even if you plan to stay in your own state? And sort of as a corollary, is it best to seek out mentors within your local community?
Darnell, I feel like that first question was teed up perfectly for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's about the state. It's more about, I think, what you're interested in. You know, similar to my story, his name is Eric White. He was not in my state, but he did the kind of work that I was interested in, and you know, I didn't let the geography stop me from reaching out to him to say, hey, you know, I like what you do. I want to be one guy on your, you know, person on your team. Please, like, whatever I can do to help out, you know. Yeah, I want to be your protege, like whatever I can do. And so I didn't let especially today's world, I mean, we've all seen where now everyone has been able to shift to a virtual everything. So, you know, even though the people in his office are closer to him in proximity, they're all, you know, a couple of types away. And so I wouldn't let any geography stop me from reaching out to somebody if I was interested in being my mentor.
Yeah. I agree with that, Darnell. I mean, it's fair to say that if you're in the same office with somebody or the same geographic location, it may be easier to be more relatable or more easy to access. But I would start by looking for somebody who shares some commonality of interest or some commonality of future that, you know, something that you're looking into for yourself. And I would use that and perhaps not rely so much, especially in the remote world we live in today, on geography.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Julie and Darnell. Like, find someone who is in an area you're interested in. Don't let geography, time zones, what have you, stop you.
Yeah, and I'll follow up, I guess, on that point, in kind of bridging it towards that second question, which is, you know, does it make sense to have mentors kind of in your community? And I think the answer is unequivocally, for me at least, yes. You can never have enough mentors or people in your corner to kind of offer advice. And you know, we talked about it earlier, the importance of perspective. You know, when I started practicing law, I initially started out doing litigation and trial work. And, you know, I made a number of connections with other lawyers in totally different fields. And coincidentally, you know, in practice, you know, some of my litigation and trial work crossed with the banking sector. And I made contacts with people in banking as a result of that, which, you know, down the road eventually led to a totally different career path than perhaps something I initially would have envisioned for myself. I think and then I think, you know, kind of the point that we had discussed earlier as well, you know, having a perspective outside of, you know, what it is that maybe your intended profession, or, you know, having those community perspectives, I think all of it's invaluable because it gives you different resources you can lean on for, you know, an advice, opinion, a reality check, a gut check, whatever the case may be. kind of help in those situations where perhaps you need that additional voice or perspective to kind of work through whatever that situation might be.
Thanks all. So our next question, I think Julie, as the coiner of the mentors of the eggs of sponsorship, we've got a question about, how do you actually make that move from mentorship to sponsorship? Is it something that you have to directly ask for?
I think you can ask for it, but more often than not, in my experience, they naturally hatch from the egg. When you're a protege, when you've become somebody's mentee and they've taken you under their wing and they've let you into their inner sanctum and they've, put you on their work assignments, and it's natural that the very next step is that your name is going to end up on a brief. Or when they have a meeting with the other partners, they go to lunch with the other partners, they're going to say, oh, Julie was working on this with me. Or, they end up sort of naturally becoming more of a promoter than just a mentor as you develop in that relationship. Although it doesn't have to be that way. If there was some thing that I was going for and I needed help getting there, there are certain people that I would feel comfortable approaching and saying, I could use your help. Could you stand for me here? Could you be a reference? Could you speak to my good name? Could you put my name in the hat for this? Or could you suggest that I might be a good fit for some project, right? So it hasn't necessarily happened that way for me, but I certainly wouldn't be scared to ask if it didn't happen organically. And hey, listen, there's a lot of times that people who might be your mentor may not realize you're interested in something, or they may not have done the, the thinking while they're running or, doing the dishes about, oh, that would be a great position for Darnell, or that would be a really great opportunity for Emily. Like sometimes you have to kind of prompt them. I'm a little more subtle. I'm usually like, gosh, I really would be interested in litigating a space case. Oh, I saw you had that NASA thing on your desk. I'm a little more subtle, but you could definitely ask.
Julie, I feel like you'd have like the whole spaceport built on your desk in Legos or something the
I know.
next day.
I'd be like, the next day, I'd be like, I really love that Death Star. Exhaust ports all the way. Like I would be right there, like exactly. Like it's okay to be less than subtle, maybe. I don't know.
I like that. And we have one final question, and then I think we can wrap it up. How do you suggest rekindling a mentorship if you haven't spoken in a while? What if the mentor is very busy and isn't checking in? So by rekindling, do you mean like how long are we talking? I'd say, what happens if you, sent a few emails and maybe a month has gone by, and I think kind of in the earlier stages of mentorship, maybe with like a professor or somebody at a summer internship that you're just starting to build that relationship.
Send them donuts.
Yes.
I
always
think
a good answer.
If somebody's not answering email, don't assume it's you, right? It's not personal. The person's probably really busy. My very next step would be to like show up with donuts, or like do some kind of over the top, maybe a little excessive action that would get their attention. Like, I know I've been, I got your email. I'm so sorry I didn't respond, but like, hey, what's up? If they're really just too busy, maybe you pass on that mentor for now, right? Like, remember to be a good friend. And if they're really too busy and they can't invest that time, maybe they have a newborn, maybe they're writing a thesis, maybe they're, maybe there's something out there that's really occupying them and they just don't have time to devote. I would say put it down for a little bit and come back, put that relationship down for a little bit, come back to it maybe a month or so, 2 months, and just check back in, hey, how are you doing? Saw this article, thought about you, something like that. But you can't force somebody to be your mentor. You have to want to come to it.
No, and I think that's an important concept. I mean, And, Julie makes a good point. Especially in this pandemic, I feel like a lot of people have been doing a lot more with less resources, at firms, companies, whatever the case may be. A lot of people may have, small children or others in their family they need to care for. Like people, time is a precious commodity that most of us, especially, those who become lawyers, probably don't have. So following up and finding a way to get back in front of someone, it's always worth the effort to do so. But I think, you also need to understand or appreciate the fact that it's possible that, just because someone formerly was a mentor, it may not be the best fit, going forward. But I think, putting yourself in that position to rekindle that, you have to give yourself the opportunity to do so.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone, all of our lovely panelists, and our most excellent moderator, Zach. We hope that you found this informative and that you enjoyed our webinar today. We have another presentation upcoming in September that we will be emailing about in a week or two that will be discussing sort of an intro to finance for law students. I was absolutely clueless with loans, deferrals, managing money, all that sort of stuff. So hopefully that will be helpful for you. And as always, please feel free to email us with any questions, any ideas or topics you would love to talk about. We are here for you as a resource.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Zach.
No, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night.